Well, the ballot boxes are now closed, and the Thurston County Election Center will be busy counting votes. And when they know the results, you'll know the results. Welcome to TC Media's award-winning election night coverage, The First Returns. I'm your host, Deborah Vinsel, CEO here at TC Media. Since 1986, TC Media has provided resources and access to information to build stronger communities and lift up voices in Thurston County, and we're committed to continuing this legacy. The First Returns is now airing with closed captions on all 4 of our cable channels, 3, 22, 26, and 77. You can also watch us streaming live through Roku and Apple TV by searching for Cablecast Screenweave and then looking for Thurston Community Media. Tonight we're going to focus on Thurston County races, including the Commissioner for District 3, Auditor, Clerk, Treasurer, and Sheriff's races, as well as the State House of Representatives and Senate for Districts 22 and District 35. We'll be visited by former Thurston County Commissioner Sandra Ribeiro, followed by a special guest, Alexis Walker, Chair of History and Political Science at St. Martin's University. With Alexis, we'll discuss election results as they come in and later interview candidates calling in to talk about their campaigns. It's going to be a busy night. But first, it is my pleasure to welcome Susan Fixdahl from the League of Women Voters of Thurston County. TC Media teams with the League every year to produce candidate forums featuring local candidates running for office. It is a partnership that has been beneficial for us and I think beneficial for the community. And I want to thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Deb. It's a pleasure to be here.
We're so glad you could be here. So a lot of folks may not know what the League of Women Voters is all about. So could you kind of give us a little bit of information about what the League's mission is, the purpose for its existence?
Yes, of course. The League of Women Voters is a political, nonpartisan organization, and our mission is to empower voters and defend democracy. We do that in a wide number of ways. And one is, as you mentioned, focusing on elections. And as chair of voter services, that's something that I especially focus on. So, for example, one of the major things we do is register voters. We team up with the Thurston County Auditor's Office, and we attend community functions all over the county. And we talk to people and try and explain the importance of voting and registering to vote. And we also have a program that we have started just this last year, a pilot project, to pre-register 16 and 17-year-olds to vote. They've always had that possibility for the last 3 years anyway, by simply checking a box on their driver's license application. But not everyone has a driver's license, and so we're trying to reach all the students in the county.
So tell me a little bit about some of the programs that, you've just kind of touched on them, but I know specifically some things that you as the Voter Services Chair have been directly involved with.
Well, of course, most lately it's been the candidate forums, and those were largely organized by Shelley Knipe and by Karen Tweet. And the hardest part of that, quite frankly, is getting candidates to agree to come. The second hardest part is creating all the questions, and we've asked for questions from the public for the last 2 years, and then we vet those questions. And we really like the way we're handling those candidate forums by coming here to Thurston Community Media, because we can pre-record those and then distribute the videos both through all of your channels and through our YouTube channel as well.
Yeah, well, we certainly love that partnership. It's something that we've done. I think the first forums we did with the League was in 1991, maybe?
Well,
91?
that was well before my time.
Long time ago. But it has, and I've heard from many people over the years that they've learned more about candidates by watching the candidate forums and have been, it's just been a really great partnership, and we're really happy to be a part of that. So tell me and tell our viewers, who can be involved with the League of Women Voters?
Yes, well, our organization, as I'm sure you know, is 102 years old. We were formed by women voters who wanted to inform women how to think about voting and how to gather information. And over the years, that's developed quite broadly. And in the 1970s, we opened our organization to all people over the age of 16. So we welcome student members who can join for free. And once you've joined the League, you've actually joined the Thurston County League, but also the state and national leagues. So there are thousands and thousands of members, and you feel a part of that.
And I do know that there are many men that are a part of this because they're just as passionate about voter information and education as the women are.
Yes, and they're very welcome. Yes, we have a large number of men in our league and across the country, and often they take leadership roles as well.
Great. So tell me a little bit about how people can get involved with the League. How would people find more information about the League locally?
Probably the best way is through our website, which is lwvthurston.org. And right on our website in the upper right-hand corner where one tends to look, there's a join button. But there are all the aspects of the League explained on our homepage, including the section that I work on, which is voter services, which is called Be a Voter. And we have an advocacy section. We work hard during the legislature to empower people to learn about what's in front of legislators and to take a stand and to advocate for their positions. And we have a legislative newsletter. We have all kinds of things going on that we'd love people to join in.
Great. So I know that in addition to candidate information, the League often takes on social issues. So what are some of the projects that the local League is involved with in the coming year?
Okay, well, right now we always have a study. It takes at least 2 years to complete, and we have one nearing completion, which is the shoreline study. It's every shoreline across the state, lakes, rivers, bays, ocean. This study will be examined by every league in the state, and then when we come to consensus, we will decide whether it can go forward, and if so, then we will base some of our advocacy on that. But we also have other things that we're very involved with, affordable housing and homelessness, the environment, especially the climate crisis, and at the national level, of course, reproductive rights and a national voting rights law.
Great. Well, I want to thank you again for being here and sharing some information about the League. Again, it's been a great partnership with TC Media. We are really proud of what we've been able to accomplish together. And thank you for taking time today to come and spend time with us.
Thanks, Deb. It's been a real pleasure.
Okay, so you hang on right there. Last week, I had an opportunity to sit down with former County Commissioner Sandra Romero to talk about potential changes to the structure of the Thurston County Board of Commissioners and to talk a little bit about state legislative policies that are potentially happening in the upcoming session. So let's take a look at that right now. So I'm really pleased to have with us right now Sandra Romero, who is well known to our community, former city council member for the city of Olympia, former county commissioner for Thurston County, and former state legislative representative. So you have served in elected office at all these various levels. So I appreciate your perspective on what's going on in our political climate right now. But let's talk a little bit about the county. There's a measure on the ballot to expand the county commission from 3 to 5. Why is that necessary?
Well, Deb, I don't know if necessary is the right word for that, but it would be very helpful to the county in a number of ways. It would help with the interjurisdictional committees, 3 members can't really do it all. We used to try, but, and we try to work together as a whole county with the municipalities. So expanding it a bit, we'll have more members from different areas learning more about the community.
So those interjurisdictional committees would be like LOT, intercity transit, those kinds of things where all the jurisdictions have some participation.
Oh yeah, home, just many. I mean, emergency preparedness, 911.
And then, but also in talking with current county commissioners and recent county commissioners, just being able for them to interact with each other would be easier with a larger commission, correct? In terms of like 2 of them meeting would be considered a quorum. So there's some of that, just the logistics of trying to communicate with each other.
That is difficult, but you have to be careful you don't create a serial meeting then when you get on the phone after you've talked to somebody and try to talk to somebody else. So you just have to be careful with that. And, 3 commissioners for a county of 300,000 is pretty antiquated.
So let's turn to state government, because you served as a legislative rep in the 22nd district. Are there any, particular things coming up that you think are specifically challenging for the legislature in the next session?
Yeah, I think so. Some are perennial issues like water quality, availability, housing, school funding, growth management. You can just keep on naming them, and they don't seem to go away. And then there's always surprise issues that come up too, and there's just so much legislative time to get things done.
Right. And this upcoming session is the long session, I think.
I believe
which
so.
is 105 days. Is that what it is? Something like that.
Don't test
and
me on that.
and probably a budget year too. So, do you think that our current political environment is contributing to that kind of, stagnation, or of just trying to get things done? Because our legislature is pretty closely divided at this point. So.
Yes. Remember my first legislative term, it was pretty amenable. I mean, if I wanted to sponsor a bill, I made sure I had Republicans on it, or I wouldn't do it because it just didn't make sense. So, and then in 95 or 6, it all flipped, 95 I think, and it just, no one would sign anything but your own party, and it was really sad. So it's continued to get worse, and I've noticed the campaign ads on TV are just absolutely sickening. They're so personal and so disingenuous. So the climate is really bad.
Has changed significantly.
Oh, yeah.
I think I think most people just recognize that the climate has changed, and it has, I think, certainly impacted when and why people choose or don't choose to run for office.
Good point. Good point. But I think at least this year we have some excellent candidates running, some of the best. So luckily, and praise that people are still willing to step up.
Right. I think this year too, we've also seen, especially with since this is a federal midterm election, just the interest across the board on the electoral process, and has been so heightened. I think it's somewhat amazing to me the response to it, that the turnout seems to be higher, that there's polls are saying that there's going to be a higher turnout than normal for a midterm election. So how do you think those federal races are going to impact the down ballot races, or do you think they will?
Well, I think the point that it's a heightened awareness is going to affect it for sure. I know there's a lot more grassroots work, like people doing postcards, nonpartisan, just encouraging people to vote. And I think that really comes from the feds. So, yeah, I think it's going to impact us.
Yeah. So are there any specific, well, you mentioned kind of generally issues that are the perennial issues for the legislature, but is there anything specific to, our community here, legislative issues that you think that you would like to see the legislature take up?
I think reclaimed water, I don't think that gets enough attention. I think everybody's afraid they're going to be drinking it. But even if it is safe, it still has a stigma. But it can be used so wildly. Why are we flushing our toilets, for example, with drinking water? I mean, there are those little things like that that make it hard to get reclaimed water widely accepted.
Right. And I know that the issue of Capitol Lake seems to have been decided. I read recently that returning to an estuary has finally been kind of the direction that that's going to go. So,
yeah, that's a big one off the plate, I'll say, and people can start talking to each other.
Right. The whole issue of Capitol Lake, I think the first time that we did any kind of programming about Capitol Lake was in the 90s, and so that's been an issue that's been, percolating for a long time. So,
for sure.
Is there anything else you'd like to share, just your perspectives about service in public office or running for a public office? You haven't been in office for a while now, so you've been kind of, an observer of the process. How it's changed, how the environment has changed, and why people should consider running for office.
Oh, wow, that's a mouthful.
4 questions in one, right there.
Okay, great. Number one, yes, consider running for office, but know that if you're not known in the community and you haven't been engaged in your community, it'll make it a lot harder to win. So I would encourage anybody that wants to run for office to join a board or commission, or if they have the money, do Leadership Thurston. That part. I think it's so important to have friends in different walks of life and different political parties, so you can have discussions and not have them become a free-for-all or something where you're never going to speak to them again.
Right.
So.
Yeah. No, yeah. I know people who have lost friends over the political environment recently, and it's sad because we should certainly, as as people, as a community, as a society, be able to sit down and talk about the things that we believe or care about from different perspectives, and find a way to build a bridge.
Very true.
Very true. Well, I want to thank you for spending some time with us and sharing your perspectives about county and state government. And thank you for your service, because you served in so many offices, and I greatly appreciate it when people toss their hat into the ring to run for office. But thanks for taking time out of your day to come and spend some time with us and share your perspectives about government with our viewers.
Okay.
We appreciate it.
Good luck to everybody.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this.
Tell your story. We provide the tools and the training to help you share your message. So learn, create,
we're going to do a little
and
tic-tac.
share with us. Because at Thurston Community Media, community is our middle name.
And we're back with the first return. So we had a chance to talk to Susan Fixdahl from the League of Women Voters, Thurston County, and Sandra Romero, former Thurston County Commissioner. Before I introduce Dr. Alexis Walker, I'd like to take a moment, though, to thank the amazing team here at TC Media that makes the first returns possible. We simply could not exist without hardworking community members behind the camera and generous donations from viewers like you. This year, the first return happens to be right in the middle of the Community Foundation of South Puget Sound's Give Local campaign, a regional giving campaign for nonprofits in the greater South Sound area. From now until November 18th, you can scan a QR code that you see on the screen right now, or go to spsgives.org to help us continue providing the resources necessary to air television for the community, by the community. Thank you for your support. Well, now it's my absolute pleasure to introduce our special guest for the night, the Chair of History and Political Science at St. Martin's University, Dr. Alexis Walker, in the flesh, in the studio. It's so exciting. Alexis, you've been with us for the last several years, but 2 years, I think you referred to yourself as a floating head last year.
I'm very grateful to be back in person.
We're so happy to have you here that we were able to do this. So, 'tis the season, 'tis the election season. What is happening locally that particularly piques your interest?
I think one of the things that's interesting is I'm always interested in the overlap between what's happening nationally and locally. And one of the things I've seen is if in the last couple of years it seemed like homelessness dominated the sort of local races and local discussions, that we've seen some of the national talking points being taken up in the local races, especially crime and abortion as two issues that across the county races and legislative races they're talking about and debating. So that's really interesting to me to see that filter down all the way to the local level.
Yeah, I noticed in some of the forums that we had with the League, the questions, particularly there were opportunities for candidates to ask each other questions, and in several of the forums, one candidate or another posed a question about reproductive rights to their opponent. And I thought that was really interesting, especially here in the state of Washington when those rights are pretty well protected.
Yes, but obviously very high on voters' minds, and a feeling like maybe even in a state like Washington it's not secure, or candidates wanting voters to think that so that they feel motivated to turn out.
What's your sense of the turnout? I mean, we've been hearing for a couple of weeks from national media on down that turnout is going to exceed records. Earlier today I saw that more than a million early votes had been cast in the state of Oregon. And the state of Oregon only has 4.2 million people in its population, so 25% of the population had already voted in the state of Oregon. So we're anticipating that kind of turnout here too.
Well, I'd be really excited if that was the case. It's always true that midterm elections like this, when the president isn't on the ballot, we tend to see lower turnout. So usually in presidential elections, it's around 65% or so, and in midterms around 45%. Sometimes Washington does exceed that, and so it would be really exciting if that were the case. But I wouldn't expect it to match anything in 2020.
Well, we'll wait to see. And of course, being a vote-by-mail state, I remember when we had to reconfigure this particular program to call it the first returns, because they truly are the first returns. We get one set of results, that's it for the night, and then we have to wait while everything else gets counted. And that's different from some other states, like Pennsylvania. They don't even start processing the ballots until the polls close. So at least we get a pretty good sense of where things are going in this first big batch of ballots that gets counted.
Yes, but always with a big asterisk, right, that things could shift dramatically as those extra ballots come in.
Right.
So patience is a virtue now on election night.
Patience is a virtue. Well, social media is an important communications tool during election seasons. Our staff took a look at some YouTube analytics and came up with Plose's predictions. Okay, so we'll come out.
Hi, I'm Jordan Plose Alicia, media producer here at TC Media, an amateur local election pollster. In this segment, we'll use viewership data analytics from our Video Voters Guide to bring you predictions about important local races. Now please note that these predictions are completely unscientific, yet still very interesting. Let's get started. First, let's take a look at the important race for Thurston County Sheriff, where Derek Sanders is challenging incumbent John D. Snaza. On the date we recorded this, which is November 2nd, Sanders was trailing in the total view count, with 132 to Snaza's 159. If we take a closer look at the numbers though, we can see here that other metrics such as watch time and shares put Snaza in the lead for overall YouTubular electoral engagement. So, for Thurston County Sheriff, Pelose's prediction is John Snaza. Next, we have Thurston County Clerk, with Tanya Moore challenging incumbent Linda Enlow. Enlow has managed to score over 2 times the views, with 278 to Moore's 135. In addition, if we take a look at the total shares, Enlow has over double the engagement with 19 shares to only 8 for Tanya Moore. For County Clerk, Pelose's prediction is Linda Enlow. Next is Thurston County Treasurer, where we have Jeff Curry challenging incumbent Jeff Gadman. Despite his incumbent status, Jeff Gadman is trailing just slightly behind in total view count, with 90 to Curry's 124. Curry also takes the lead in average view duration and total watch time. Based on these metrics, Pelose's prediction for County Treasurer is Jeff Curry. Last but not least, let's take a look at a closer race for Thurston County Commissioner, District Number 3. Vivian K. Eason is facing off against incumbent Ty Menser. Menser has a total of 78 views to Eason's 98. It looks at first that Eason is winning, but we can take a closer look at the data. Even though Eason has a higher view count, Menser has a higher average view duration. People watched his video for longer, but the overall watch time is higher with Eason. Eason also outnumbered Menser in shares 3-1. For these reasons, Pelose's prediction for County Commissioner is Vivian Eason. Well, that's all the time we have for Pelose's predictions. Thanks for joining us for this completely non-scientific YouTube electoral experiment. Now back to the show.
We always need just a little bit of levity on election night. So a new term that has been coined, YouTubular. I love that. So some YouTubular predictions from Pelose. Thank you to our staff for putting that together. Totally unscientific, YouTubular analytic experiment. So welcome back to our award-winning coverage of election night, the first returns. As the elections results are rolling in, we're here with our special guest, Dr. Alexis Walker from St. Martin's University. And we do have numbers, so let's take a look at what's happening in the Thurston County race for County Commission in District 3. The incumbent Ty Menser is currently leading with 58% of the vote over his opponent Vivian Eason with 42% of the vote. What's your take on this race?
Menser is a strong incumbent. He's held the seat since 2018, and that Eason, while having public service experience, it would be tough to unseat him given his track record.
Okay. Moving on, for more county races, we have in the clerk's office, Linda Enlow, also the incumbent with 57% of the vote, Tanya Moore with 40% of the vote. A lot of folks don't know what the county clerk does.
They're sort of the administrative and financial officer of the courts. And this is a tough race in that it's a product of the top 2 primary, that the top 2 vote getters get on the ballot regardless of party. So these are both Democrats running for the seat, which can be tough for voters really distinguishing. And so Enlow, as the incumbent who's already held the position, likely held an advantage with name recognition in this race.
Okay, moving on. For the Thurston County Treasurer, incumbent Jeff Gadman, 65% of the vote that's currently in. His opponent, Jeff Curry, with 35% of the vote. That's a significant lead.
Yes, definitely. Curry was an outsider without a lot of campaign organization or political connections to help him overcome the incumbency advantage that Gadman has.
Okay. And moving on, we see through the assessor's office, Steve Drew, the incumbent with 58% of the vote, Dave Kohler, 42% of the vote. That's a little closer, I think, than some folks might have thought it would be.
Yeah, definitely closer, but a similar story that we've got an incumbent who's been in office since 2011, this is another outsider candidate without a lot of campaign organization. So it's going to be hard for him, I think, to make up that difference.
Okay. And I think we have, last but not least, on the county races. Oh, no, we have a couple more. Mary Hall, I won't say last but not least. Mary Hall, County Auditor, the incumbent with 63% of the vote. Her opponent, Sal Militello, with 37% of the vote.
Yeah, so another sort of lopsided result. Militello is a Republican precinct committee officer, but Mary Hall, winning Auditor of the Year in 2020. This is another tough incumbent with a lot of name recognition to overcome.
Right, and was one of, I think, 3 candidates considered for the Secretary of State's position when Kim Wyman left that office. All right, and I think we have the sheriff's race. This is the one everybody's watching. This is the one everybody's watching. We currently see John Snaza with 55% of the vote and Derek Sanders with 45% of the vote for the sheriff's office. Okay. This has been an interesting race.
The numbers are very...
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Let's make a correction. I'm sorry. It's John Snaza with 45% of the vote and Derek Sanders with 55% of the vote. Our apologies for getting that. Our apologies. We'll fix that. This is a very interesting race now. John Snaza is our incumbent sheriff. Derek Sanders, former member of the sheriff's office force. This has been an interesting race.
Yeah, on a lot of levels. So interesting in the sense, we've just been talking about the advantage that incumbents have. But in the primary, Sanders actually got more votes than Snaza, sort of signaling that maybe there was some weakness in Snaza's campaign. At the same time, there's also the awkwardness that Sanders was a deputy sheriff working underneath Snaza, and so you have some awkwardness and conflict there. And accusations about, so Sanders accused Snaza of an internal misconduct investigation that he argued was politically motivated. Snaza has accused the media and also the prosecutor's office of bringing up this civil case against him for a collision that happened while he was on duty, also saying that was politically motivated. So there's a lot of accusations on both sides that things are happening to try and harm their candidacies.
Yeah, this race is probably, I mean, generally speaking, the politics in our community is relatively civil. And I don't know that this one has gotten particularly, that has particularly lacked civility, but there's been a lot of poking.
Yes,
They've really poked each other, often very politely, but it's been a fraught campaign. It has been a fraught campaign. All right, we'll be back with more numbers in a minute, but right now we have Ty Mincer on Zoom with us or on the phone. I can't remember. I don't know which. On Zoom. Ty Mincer on Zoom. Thanks for joining us, Ty. How are you?
I'm feeling better after those results. I've been ill the last couple of days, so that's why that was a nice thing to lift my spirits here.
Yeah, so the night definitely seems to be trending your direction. There's no doubt about that. You've served in office now for several years, and was campaigning this time around different?
It was quite a bit different, I would say. First time around, I was a lawyer, I was an attorney, and I was trying to work as close to full-time as I could, as well as trying to do things that I've never done before and create relationships I didn't have. So it's a little easier as an incumbent because I have the relationships with the people. I didn't have to build them from the ground up. But your job as a commissioner is also, the hours are really long, and you just don't have the ability to do things like at night. When I was an attorney, I could leave at like 4 o'clock and go campaign and knock on doors every night. And I can't always do that as a commissioner. I've got a lot of meetings that are in the evenings and different things. So it's a very different dynamic.
Right. So nobody campaigns in a vacuum. I know that you have a team working with you. Are there folks that you would like to lift up to acknowledge?
Sure. I worked with Sullivan Campaign Services, and Rob Richards in particular helped me through this. Carolyn Cox, who's a Lacey Council member, was on my team and did all kinds of stuff for me. Jordan Morris, my treasurer, and did a great job and is a great person to have on my team. I also want to say, in the Olympian reported, and some of your viewers may know that we lost Sue Gunn a couple of weeks ago. She was my campaign manager in 2018, and she, I wouldn't be here without her. And she got into my campaign early, and she had a lot of experience. She'd run for Congress. She'd run successfully for Port. So she was able to get me to run a very professional campaign as a complete outside newcomer in 2018. And to have her pass away here at the tail end of this was really sad for all of us, because we all worked with her and respected her, and it's a big loss to our community.
Yeah, well, thank you, and our condolences on the loss to you and her friends, and obviously to her family. Well, I want to thank you for taking time tonight to join us, and I hope you feel better soon.
Thank you, Deb.
Okay.
Thanks for having me.
Take care. Okay, so don't go away. We'll be right back after this brief break.
Are you guys ready?
Ready?
Hi, my name is Scott Cassou, and I'm inviting you to come and share an evening of great music with me and my friend, cellist Holly Reeves. We're coming to TC Media's Studio A on November 19th, and we want you to be here with us. This studio will be transformed into an intimate concert venue, and you will be our studio audience. For 36 years, TC Media has been the place where many local artists have showcased their talent. Here in Studio A, local nonprofits have shared their stories. Candidates for office have debated issues, and our friends and neighbors have learned how to make TV shows. Holly Reeves and I are excited to add to the legacy of the great local programming here, produced in Studio A. You can be a part of it too. We do hope to see you on Saturday, November 19th. Tickets are available at tcmedia.org. Don't miss it.
Filmmaking in Olympia, Washington has never been more accessible thanks to the help of Oli Film. Oli Film is a community of South Sound talent and producers committed to providing resources for up-and-coming filmmakers in our community.
You've got to have support. I mean, there's the writer, the producer, the director, the camera person, the sound person, the audio person, the crafty, the hair and makeup, there's wardrobe, there's the art department. There's so many aspects of filmmaking if you want to do it right, that it takes a lot of people to get it done. So this is why support of a community organization such as Oli Film is imperative to really, I guess, bring that art into the community.
Watch Mission Nonprofit this November to learn more. You can stream from tcmedia.org or tune in to Channel 77 throughout the month.
Thanks for staying with us. I'm Deb Vinsel, and this is The First Returns. We're going to go right to a conversation with, I believe we have Jeff Gadman available now. Hi, Jeff. There he is.
Good evening.
How are you? I'm well, and how are you?
I'm doing awesome.
Yeah, the night looks like it's trending your direction.
It does, and I am really honored to have the opportunity to continue to serve for the next 4 years. You know, this is such an amazing community to live in, and I am proud to be part of the leadership.
So we just had a conversation with Ty Menser about his campaign. You've served in office for a while now. How was campaigning this time around different from when you were a newbie?
From when I was a newbie. So the very first race I got into was Thurston County Assessor in 2010. I knew absolutely nothing about politics. And so now I've learned how to message. I've learned how to ask people for the vote. And so this time, you know, it's just talking to people and making sure people know that I was the qualified candidate in this race.
So campaigns don't happen in a vacuum, and candidates don't campaign on their own. So I'm wondering, are there folks you would like to lift up to acknowledge tonight? Oops. Did we lose Jeff? Hello? Oh, we lost Jeff. Oh, well, technology is great until it's not. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Hopefully we can get him back and we will finish that conversation. So I'm going to ask my control room, do we have other results that we haven't shared yet? Let's take a look at those. Maybe. Oh, okay. Oh, well, okay. So this is obviously for a federal seat. Now, the results you're seeing here are the results in Thurston County. So Thurston County obviously favors Patty Murray over Tiffany Smiley. This is, you know, we don't often talk about federal races, but this has been a pretty contentious campaign.
Yes, and if you've been watching TV, you certainly know that the campaign is going on. So, you know, polls had this within a 1 point to 10 point difference between the candidates, so definitely closer than we expected in the past, and keeping Patty Murray, who's now been in office, 30 years,
right,
on her toes, fighting for a campaign with a lot of national money pouring in. This is probably the most expensive Senate campaign we've had in Washington State history.
I'm going to see real quick if I can pull up the Secretary of State's, oh, there it is. I have the Secretary of State's website in front of me. So statewide, Patty Murray is winning with 57% of the vote to 42.5. Again, we're a vote by mail state. This is just the first tranche of ballots that have been served, but that's a pretty significant lead.
Yeah, so maybe some of the fears were overblown about how close this race was. But.
Right, right. I remember it did seem to be that the pundits were saying it was much, much closer than it appears to be. Okay, moving on with some additional, it looks like we have Jeff Gadman back, so let's loop right back to that. Hi, Jeff.
Hi,
He's back.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I think my laptop ran out of battery.
Oh, it happens. It happens to the best of us. Technology will often let you down when you least expect it. So we were getting ready to talk about your campaign and the support you've had for your campaign, and the folks that you might want to lift up to acknowledge tonight.
So first of all, I want to give a shout out to my wife, Marin. She is my biggest supporter and the one that I want to stand next to for the rest of my life. I mean, she's my rock. She's my guidepost. She is the one picks me up when I'm down and keeps pushing me to be better. But I also want to thank Danielle Westbrook, my campaign manager, because she is my political guidepost, and she is awesome. She puts together the team that promotes my campaign. But I've also got a lot of other supporters in this community, including local elected leaders, Beth Dolio, Jessica Bateman, Ty Menser, Carolina Mejia, the Olympia City Council members that supported me, the Lacey City Council members that supported me, Tumwater City Council members that supported me, and each of them contributed in a way that I cannot thank enough.
Well, I want to thank you for taking time tonight. I know you I don't know, maybe celebrating there. I would hope it's a night to celebrate. Thank you for joining us and for reconnecting. I greatly appreciate that you made that effort.
Well, I think Thurston Community Media provides a vital service to our community, and I will always support that because getting the message out, helping government be more transparent is so important. So thank you so much for this opportunity to speak to the community.
It is our pleasure, and thank you for that. We greatly appreciate it. Jeff Gadman, currently leading in the race for Thurston County Treasurer. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so let's take a look at some numbers that we haven't put up yet. Maybe. Oh, there we go. Okay, so in District 22, now District 22, the legislative District 22 is completely inside Thurston County. So the results we're going to see on the screen are results for this particular race. There are several other legislative districts that have pieces of Thurston County, and I'll try to refer to the Secretary of State's website to get us some clarity on those. But here in Thurston County, Beth Dolio, the incumbent in this Position 1 legislative district, has a substantial lead over Loretta Burns.
So technically not an incumbent because she stepped down to run for Congress, but coming back in, she still has a lot of name recognition and campaign sort of organization. So it's not surprising given that she has held the seat in the past that she was able to likely be successful again.
Right. Moving on, we have also in the 22nd District, Jessica Bateman, also with a substantial lead over her opponent, Kate Plager. Jessica, known well to folks in the Olympia area, former city council member.
Right, yeah, so deep roots in the community and up against an opponent who doesn't have an outsider without a lot of political experience or connections. So a tough job to overcome the Bateman's experience and name recognition.
Right, and I think in any race that we've seen, incumbents, you know, you come into the race with an edge. There's
right.
no doubt about that. Moving on, do we have 35th District? We do, look at that, for the Senate seat in the 35th District. Now, these results up here are 52% for Drew McEwen, 48% for Julian Gale. Those are the Thurston County results. The Secretary of State's website shows the district, the total district results, not terribly different. 54.25% for Drew McEwen, 45%. So McEwen has a pretty substantial lead in this race.
Mm-hmm. This is it's an open seat after Senator Sheldon is retiring. And the 35th District is a bit more rural than some of our other districts and things in Thurston County. So we get definitely closer races between Democrats and Republicans than we see elsewhere. McEwen is currently held the House position, so he's switched over to run for Senate. That likely gives him an edge that he's already won an election in the 35th District, just in the House.
Mm-hmm. Moving on to the next position, which is position 1 in District 35, Dan Griffey and James DeHart. Griffey with 55% in Thurston County, DeHart 45% in Thurston County. Similar district-wide, 57.12 for Griffey, 42.77 for DeHart. In that district, on those district-wide numbers. So what do we know about these guys?
So interesting in that, so Griffey's the incumbent, but he's a Democrat. So here's, in the past race, the Republican was leading by those same numbers. So here's a district that can really swing both ways, that we're seeing support for both parties within it. Griffey as the incumbent seems to have the edge.
Okay. And last but not least, in the 35th District, their state representative position 2. Do we have that one? Sandy Kaiser and Travis Couture. Hello? Oops, looks like something might be stuck. Okay, well, Sandy Kaiser, who prefers the Democrat district-wide in the 35th District, 48.8%. Travis Couture, 51%. These results here, that's district-wide in that 35th District. That's pretty close. That's a race that potentially could change.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, illustrating how that district can really go both ways. Both interesting candidates. Couture is a Navy veteran who works for a manufacturing corporation. Kaiser has an interesting background, the Democratic candidate, serving with the State Department for almost 30 years at the national level. You know, you wonder if that sort of government experience translates down to the local level. Do voters see that in the same way they would see Bateman's service on the city council transferring up to the state legislature?
The 35th District also geographically is interesting because it's like a little bit of a bunch of places. You know, it's part of Thurston County, a little bit of Mason, some of Kitsap. And those are very different. Those communities have very different personalities.
Absolutely, and definitely you're seeing a lot more of sort of the rural vote. There's much more of a conservative strength in the 35th District in comparison to, say, the District 22 that we've also been looking at.
Okay, so moving on. What have we not seen so far? Okay, District 19, and I am not 100% sure exactly where District 19 is. But we have Joel McIntyre with 68% of the vote and Kara Cusack with 31% of the vote here in the greater Thurston County area. So let me see if I can find Legislative District 19. It's not popping up on my, well, let me do this. find 19. Okay. So, oops, wrong race. Let me get the other. Okie dokie. Let me just do this. We're just popping around here. Okay, how about we lose that on the screen and I will find it. In the meantime, there are several other districts, District 2, District 19, that have just like slivers of Thurston County, but there are Thurston County residents voting for them. So I think real quick, okay, so Legislative District 19, Position 2, is that the one we're looking at? We're going to find that maybe. Joel McIntyre, there we go. So in the voters in Thurston County that voted for Joel McIntyre, 68% liked him, 31% liked Kara Cusack. The district-wide results are not terribly different, 59.4% for McIntyre and 40% for Cusack. So it looks like he is going to be, he has a substantial lead in that race also. Next up. Oh, so this is, okay, so this is our federal representative, Marilyn Strickland, Washington Congressional District 10, which is the new district that was formed after the 2010 census. We got this District 10. Denny Heck, our current lieutenant governor, was our first representative there. So Marilyn Strickland was 62% of the vote here in Thurston County, but for the district-wide, she is at 56.9%, almost 57% of the vote against Keith Swank, 42%. That's not really a surprise, is it?
No, not really. Again, that incumbency advantage that we've been talking about, and this district tends to lean Democratic.
Yeah, so, okay, I think, how about we loop back around and run through the county races one more time, and then we're coming up on the end of our hour. This has zipped by, and we're going to run through the results from the Thurston County races. In the assessor's office race, Steve Drew, the incumbent, with 58% of the vote. As of tonight, Dave Kohler, the opponent, 42% of the vote. In the auditor's race, Mary Hall, the incumbent, has a significant lead with 63% of the vote. Sal Militello with 37%. The county clerk's office, Linda Inlow, also the incumbent with 57% of the vote. Tanya Moore with 40%. Thurston County Commissioner District 3, Ty Menser, the incumbent, 58% of the vote against Vivian K. Eason with 42% of the vote. For the sheriff's race, this is kind of the surprise for the evening. John Snaza, the incumbent sheriff, with 45% of the vote. His opponent, Derek Sanders, 55% of the vote. We have seen in the past, I'm thinking specifically Gary Edwards' race, a couple of years ago. His race was close. He was not lead. He was in the deficit position at the close of election night, and yet as returns came in, that lead, he closed the gap and was able to be reseated as the county commissioner. Is that a possibility, do you think, here?
I mean, it's always possible.
Yeah.
You would need those ballots that are coming in to be really heavily in favor of one candidate or the other, and that's hard to predict. On the other hand, one of the things I like to see about this is you don't want your candidates in office to get comfortable, and so having every incumbent win every election it isn't good for democracy.
Right.
So not that I care about this race, but just in general, having close races and having those incumbents have to work for re-election is good for our democracy.
Yeah, and this one again, like we mentioned it earlier, that the sheriff's race was a fraught campaign for a variety of reasons. So we have just a few minutes left. So I was just looking at some statistics from the auditor's office. According to what I'm looking at right now, 35.52% was the voter turnout as of today. But because, and we've said this over and over again, because we're a vote by mail state, a lot of people don't understand that, you know, we've got several days ahead of us, ballots that are going to be cast. This tonight obviously would be the largest number of ballots. Tomorrow will be the second largest number of ballots. Anything that was dropped into a drop box before 4 o'clock today was processed, and we got those tabulated results today. If it was dropped after 4 o'clock or received tomorrow in the mail or some other time in the mail, it'll be counted down the road. So that's why we call this the first returns, because it's not the final returns, it's the first ones. We may have a few interesting results yet ahead of us. Well, I want to thank you for joining us, Alexis. It's been great. Is there anything, just in closing, we have a couple of minutes left, just in general, your perspective about this election this year, that, you know, has it been a surprise? Have there been, you know, what's been your perspective on it?
Well, you know, I talked about the sort of national issues filtering down to the local level. But I hope that we keep having things be local in the sense that we aren't just replicating the battles at the national level, but we're talking about what's happening here and focused on those things. And I think certainly in the candidate forums you see that it isn't just the battle between Democrats and Republicans being mirrored what's happening nationally, and certainly some of the ugliness at the national level we don't see down here. Even our most, you know, fraught campaign in the sheriffs was relatively civil. And so it's nice to see a more local, more personal, more professional maybe politics happening at the local level, and it's heartening to see that continue.
Well, they say all politics is local. It's local politics that affect you immediately. So voting for your county commissioner, your treasurer, or your sheriff, your board of education, your school, your city council members, those people deal with the meat and potatoes issues of our lives every day.
Absolutely.
So anyway, so I want to thank you for being with us. I'm so thrilled we were able to do this in person this year. It's been great.
Happy to be back.
Thank you again for watching The First Return, our award-winning live election night coverage. We ask you to stay informed by going to the tcmedia.org website, subscribe to our newsletter. We offer classes, video equipment rental, studio space to members who've been trained. We also invite you to watch our regular programming and come to the station anytime during our business hours to see how you can get involved. Thank you to Alexis. Thank you to Susan Fixdahl and to Sandra Romero for their time. And thank you, voters, for stepping up and exercising this most important right to select people for office who affect your lives. Thanks to our team here at TC Media. For all of us, this has been The First Returns. Good night.